Commander Jace Harlow sat in the pilot's seat of the Star Voyager, staring at the black space around him. The stars blinked like tiny diamonds, and the galaxy stretched like a painting. It was quiet, peaceful, and endless. He had traveled far from Earth. His mission was simple: explore uncharted space, make peaceful contact with any intelligent life, and return safely. But for weeks he had found nothing, only silence and rocks. His ship was low on supplies and he was tired. Then, everything changed. A strange signal appeared on his screen. It was a soft pulse, like a heartbeat, not machine-made. It felt alive. The signal didn't match anything in human records. No known language, no code, just a pattern thump. 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 Dachasi leaned forward. "Where are you coming from?" he whispered. He followed the signal. It led him toward a hidden part of the sector, covered in dark clouds and energy fields. His ship shook as it entered. Lights flickered. The engine slowed. And then, through the clouds, he saw it, a planet green and blue, full of life, with rings of silver gas spinning around it. It wasn't on any star map. Jace scanned it again. "It's possible," he said. "This world shouldn't exist." But it was real. He tried to fly past it, but his ship lost power. Alarms beeped. The ship was being pulled in by an invisible force, gentle but strong. He had no choice but to land. With a loud crash and sparks flying, the Star Voyager hit the surface. Jace climbed out of the ship, coughing from the smoke. The air was fresh and breathable. Around him were giant glowing trees, soft blue grass, and floating crystals that moved in slow circles. Everything was strange, beautiful, and silent. "Where am I?" he asked himself. He walked forward, scanning everything with his wrist device. Nothing made sense. The plants didn't match any database. The crystals gave off soft energy waves like music. Then he saw them, figures moving through the trees. Tall, graceful, with smooth skin that shimmered like silver. Their eyes glowed faintly. They wore long robes and carried staffs. They were not human. Before he could speak, they raised their staffs. A bright light flashed hand. Jace felt his body freeze. Not painful, just still. He couldn't move, could only watch. They walked toward him. One of them placed a hand on his chest and looked into his eyes. Then they spoke in a soft, musical voice. "You do not belong here." Jace was taken to a glowing palace made of crystal and stone. It floated above a lake and was connected by bridges of light. The aliens didn't hurt him, but they said nothing. Else, he was treated like a guest and a prisoner at the same time. In the palace, he was brought to a large room. The walls were covered in glowing symbols. Soft music played from unseen sources. In the center of the room stood a tall figure more elegant than the others. She wore a long dress made of silver and light. Her hair flowed like water, and her skin glowed faintly blue. She stood with her back to him, looking at a glowing tree. Growing from the floor, something about her felt different. Special Jack didn't speak at first. He just looked. There was something about the way she stood. Calm, strong, graceful. Not proud, but full of quiet power. He felt his heart beat. Faster. Without thinking, he whispered to himself, "Most beautiful thing I've ever seen." At that moment, the alien woman turned slowly, but not to face him. She turned her back to him, fully walking away without a word. Jace stood there, confused and embarrassed. Had she heard him? Later, Jace was placed in a guest room with no doors, just smooth walls and a soft bed made of crystal leaves. The food appeared without sound. The same musical energy played all night. He sat on the bed thinking, "Why did she turn away?" He asked out loud. The aliens were peaceful, but they were testing him. That much was clear. They hadn't spoken more. They just watched how he moved, how he reacted, how he treated their world. He remembered Earth's history, how humans had once taken what wasn't theirs, broken peace with fear and greed. Maybe these aliens feared that too. Maybe he had to earn their trust. The next day, he was taken outside the palace to a garden filled with floating stones and soft winds. He was handed a two-alien indizine and pointed to a broken device. Made of crystals and wires, no words. Just the look. Fix it. Jace took a deep breath. All right, let's see what we've got. He worked all day. The tools were unfamiliar, but he used logic. Step by step, he rebuilt the device. Sparks flew. The crystals lit up. And finally it worked. The device floated and played a soft hum. The aliens watching him didn't clap. They didn't smile. But one of them nodded. Progress. That night, Jace walked through the palace garden. It was glowing under the twin moons. He followed the sound of music, soft and full of emotion, like sadness and hope mixed together. He found the source. It was her, the alien woman. It's the one he had called beautiful. She sat under a glowing tree, playing a strange stringed instrument. Her back was turned again. This time, he saw her face in the reflection of the water. She had one perfect eye, bright and glowing. The other was clouded and dull, half closed. She was blind in one eye. Jace didn't speak. He didn't move. He just listened the next morning. Jace was brought back to her. She stood in the great hall again, this time with her face toward him. Her expression was calm, but her voice carried strength. Why did you call me beautiful? It was soft, but the room went silent. Jace stepped forward. I didn't mean your face, he said, or your body. I didn't even see it clearly. I meant the way you stood. Strong, still, graceful, like you didn't fear anything. She looked at him, her one bright eye searching his. I thought you were mocking me, she said. Because of this, she touched her blind eye. Jace shook his head. I didn't even see that. But even if I had, I wouldn't care. There was a long silence. Then she said, My name is Kalira. I am the Princess of Elandra. You are. The first human to ever set foot here, Jace nodded slowly.
Commander Jace Harlow, Earth Explorer Fleet.
Lara turned again, but this time not in rejection. She looked back at him one more time and said, Let's see what kind of human you truly are. Commander Jace Harlow woke up early the next morning. The room was quiet, and the glowing leaves on the ceiling moved slowly, like they were breathing. The air was fresh. There was no alarm, no voice, no warning. But Jace knew today would be another test. Since he arrived on the alien planet Elandra, nothing had been easy. The aliens had not harmed him, but they also had not welcomed him. They were watching him, judging him, testing him, and the one who mattered most, Princess Kyla, had finally spoken to him yesterday. She had revealed her name, her position, and her secret. She was born blind in one eye. Jace had not laughed. He had not stared. He had respected her, that she had noticed now. He had to prove himself even more. Jace stepped out of the room. Two silent guards were waiting. They were tall, with soft silver armor and long staffs. They didn't speak, just motioned for him to follow. They led him to a wide courtyard inside the floating palace. The sky above was a mix of purple and blue. Strange birds flew in the air, their wings glowing like glass. In the center of the courtyard stood Kalira. She wore a long, dark robe today, with silver patterns that looked like stars. Her long hair was braided, her face was calm. She looked directly at Jace and said, Today you will walk the path of truth. Jace blinked. What does that mean? She didn't answer. Instead, she raised her hand. The floor below them shifted. A circle of stone lifted up from the ground, and strange objects appeared. Tools, machines, glowing crystals, and broken parts. Jace looked around. It's a workshop? He asked. Kalira said, Our ancestors built things with their minds, their hands, and their hearts. Let us see what your hands can build. And then she left. Jace stood in the middle of the circle. No one explained what to do. No instructions. No help. Just broken alien machines. Tools he didn't recognize. The eyes of the aliens watching from above. He took a deep breath. All right, he said to himself. Let's do this. Walked over to the nearest device. It looked like a small cube, glowing softly, but it was cracked. Inside were tiny wires, like glass threads. He remembered his training. Observe, observe, understand. He studied the cube. He saw a pattern in the way the wires bent. Maybe it was a kind of energy transmitter. He used one of the alien tools, like a crystal blade, to gently open it. Sparks flew. His fingers burned. But he didn't stop. Piece by piece, he fixed it. After 20 minutes, the cube glowed bright and floated into the air. A soft humming sound came from it. It worked, he smiled. One down. The second test was harder. He was given a sphere broken and leaking blue gas. It looked dangerous. Jace didn't touch it right away. He scanned it with his wrist device. The readings were wild and stable energy. If he fixed this wrong, it could explode. He carefully opened a small panel on the side. Inside were 3 spinning rings. They were off balance. He thought for a moment, then used a curved alien tool to adjust the center ring. He held his breath and pressed the switch. The sphere stopped leaking. It glowed steady. Fixed, the aliens above whispered among themselves, but still no one clapped. No praise, just silence. Jace kept working for hours. He fixed a total of 7 devices, each one harder than the last. His hands were shaking. His shirt was wet with sweat. His muscles ached. Still, he didn't complain. He didn't ask for help. He just worked, because he knew this was a test, not just of his skill but of his heart. After sunset, Kalira returned. She looked at the 7 repaired machines. Her face showed no emotion. She walked up to him. "You completed the tasks," she said. Jace nodded. "Yes." "You asked for no help." "No." You showed patience. Focus. Respect. Her eye met his. "You did not brag. You did not break. You're unusual for your kind." Jace shrugged. "I just want to prove that we're not what you fear." Looked at him quietly. Then she turned and motioned for him to follow. They walked through the palace garden. The moons were full now. The trees glowed brighter in the night. Firefly-like lights danced in the air. Kalira led him to a quiet place near a waterfall. The sound of water was calming. She sat on a smooth stone bench and said, "Do you know why your kind is not trusted?" Jace nodded slowly. "I know our history. We made mistakes. We took from others. We thought we were better, but we're learning slowly," Kalira said. "Your people reach into space with ships. We reach into space with spirit. We watch before we touch. We listen before we speak." She looked up at the stars. "This place, my planet, sacred. We do not let outsiders in. You are the first human here." Jace sat down beside her, not too close. "I didn't come to take. I only came to see, to learn." Kalira turned to face him. "Then you shall see." The next morning, Kalira brought Jace to a hidden part of the police room, filled with ancient stone tablets and floating memory crystals. "This is our truth," she said. She waved her hand. One of the crystals lit up. A hologram appeared in the air, a vision of war. Ships burning, cities falling. Screams in alien language. Our ancestors fought among themselves, for power, for control. We were not always peaceful. She showed. More memories, ruins, ash, pain. But we learned, we stopped. We chose balance. Jace watched in silence. Then Kalira showed a final crystal. It was her young, standing in a circle of judges. They called her unfit because of her eye. They said she could not rule. But my mother believed in me, Kalira said softly. She trained me in silence. I became what I am without their blessing, only with her love. Jace looked at her with respect. "You're strong," he said. Kalira's voice was calm. "I had to be." As they left the memory room, alarms suddenly rang through the palace. Lights turned red. Guards ran down the halls. Jace turned to Kalira. "Happening?" She looked serious. "Something is wrong in the energy core. Our planet's balance is failing." She turned to the guards. "Send word to the council. Prepare the lower chambers." She looked at Jace. "Your knowledge of machines? It may be needed." Later that evening, Kalira and Jace stood at the edge of a deep cavern inside the palace. Below, strange machines glowed, twisting gears and floating crystals. But some were cracked. Sparks flew. The energy was unstable. "This power keeps our world alive," Kalira said. If it breaks, our planet could fall into darkness. Jace. Studied the system. I think I can help. I recognize some of this. It's similar to an Earth fusion system, but mixed with alien crystal resonance. Kalira looked surprised. You understand our design? Enough to try? She nodded. You may have one chance, but if you fail, it may end your life. Jay smiled slightly. I've risked my life before, but not for something this important. That night, Kalira stood on a balcony. Watching the stars, she heard soft footsteps behind her. Jace stood there. He looked at her and said, Today was the hardest day of my life, but I don't regret any of it. Kalira didn't smile, but her eyes softened. You did well, Jace. Looked at her quietly. Do I pass your test? Kalira didn't answer right away. Then she said softly, Tomorrow, you enter the core. That will be your final test. The next morning came quickly. Commander Jace Harlow stood in front of a heavy crystal door deep inside the palace of Elandra. Behind that door was the energy core, the beating heart of the planet. If something went wrong in there, the planet's balance would collapse. Millions could die. Kalira stood beside him, calm but serious. She wore a white robe with gold threads, the royal symbol shining on her chest. She held a small, glowing pendant in her hand, gift from her mother, who had passed many cycles ago. You don't have to do this, she said quietly. Jace looked at her. I do. I can't leave knowing I didn't try. She nodded. Then the great door opened with a low hum. Inside the chamber, everything glowed in soft blue light. Floating rings spun around a tall crystal pillar in the center. Smaller machines pulsed around it like a heartbeat. But several were cracked and sparking. The core was unstable. Jace walked slowly around the platform, studying each machine. It held a scanner from his ship. The readings were strange power levels, rising and falling too fast. This is not a natural problem, he said. Lyra, standing near the entrance, looked up. What do you mean, Jace? Tapped the screen. Someone changed the settings. This wasn't an accident. She froze. You're saying it was sabotage? Jace nodded. Yes, and it happened recently. Maybe within the last few days. Kalira clenched her hands. Only royal guards and engineers can enter this place. That means someone close to you is working against you, Jace said. She turned away, her face full of worry. For the next 2 hours, Jace worked on the machines. He replaced cracked crystals, adjusted energy flows, and reset the spin speed of the stabilizers. Sweat ran down his neck, but he kept going. At one point, sparks flew from a control panel and burned his hand. He didn't stop. He wrapped it in cloth and continued. Kalira watched from above. She didn't offer help, not because she didn't care, but because she knew this was his fight to win. Finally, Jace looked up. I've slowed the failure, but it's not enough. I need to get to the core crystal and adjust it from inside. Kalira's eyes widened. No one has entered the core directly. It's too dangerous. Jace smiled weakly. Well, I'm not from here, am I? Minutes later, Jace climbed down into a lower chamber beneath the platform. The air was hot. Cracks glowed on the walls. The core crystal stood tall in the center, surrounded by 3 energy rings spinning rapidly. He placed a hand on the control panel. It didn't respond. Kalira, he called into his wrist. Come, I need your voice command. It won't let me in. Up above, Kalira hesitated. Then she pressed her pendant to her chest and spoke into the system. By my name. Princess Kalira of Elandra, I grant entry. The machine beeped. The rings slowed. The core crystal opened, revealing its inner chamber. Jace stepped inside. The moment he entered the crystal, his mind was filled with visions, flashes of light. Memory, sound, he saw Elandra's history, the ancient wars that destroyed cities, the first queen who chose peace, the building of the core to heal the land, the long peace that followed, and then he saw Kalira as a child, lonely, afraid, standing in front of the elders, her one blind eye hidden by a veil. They called her flawed, said she would bring weakness. But her mother held her hand and said, flaws are where strength grows. Visions ended. Jace stood inside the core, breathing hard. I understand now, he whispered. He reached out and adjusted the inner circuits. The energy calmed, the shaking stopped. The walls grew quiet. The core was stable. When Jace climbed out of the chamber, his legs were shaking. His face was pale. Kalira ran to him and caught him before he fell. You did it, she said softly. Jace looked into her eye, weak but smiling. Your mother was right. You were meant to lead. Later, Jace rested in his guest room. His burns were healing, and food had been brought to him, but he didn't care about the pain. He kept thinking about what he saw in the crystal, the truth. About Kalira's past. Suddenly, the door opened. Kalira walked in, alone. She stood silently for a moment. You saw, didn't you? She asked. Jayak nodded. I saw what they did to you. She sat down beside him, her voice low. They feared weakness. They feared that my eye would bring shame. My mother taught me that true sight is not just with eyes, it is with the heart. Said they were wrong? You're stronger than all of them? She looked at him, her face soft. No one has ever said that to me before, not even my own council. They sat in silence for a while. Then Kalira stood. There's something else. I must show you. Something hidden. That night, Kalira led Jace to a secret garden outside the palace, hidden behind a wall of vines. The garden was quiet, full of glowing flowers and soft wind chimes. At the center was a mirror, pool still and deep. This is the place where my mother came to speak with the stars, Kalira said. She believed we are not alone in the universe, and that one day, someone would come who could help us see with new eyes. She looked at Jace. I think she was speaking about you. Jace felt his throat tighten. I'm just one man. Didn't plan this. Kalira smiled gently. Sometimes the universe doesn't ask what we plan. It shows us what we need. She turned toward the pool and knelt beside it. Jace knelt too. They looked into the water. Their reflections shimmered together. Then Kalira whispered, the council must know what you did. They must hear the truth. Jace nodded. I'm ready. The next morning, a grand meeting was called in the Hall of Voices, the oldest chamber. In the palace, the high seats were filled with the alien council, their robes shining with symbols of knowledge and time. Kalira stood before them, stood beside her. The head elder, Captain Virak, frowned. He had always mistrusted Jace. You brought a human into our core, Virak said. You risked our world. Kalira raised her voice. He did not risk it. He saved it, the room murmured. He repaired the machines, stabilized the heart, and he found the sabotage. Virak narrowed his eyes. Where is your proof? Kalira stepped forward and held up her pendant. I grant full memory access to the crystal logs. Let them see. She activated the pendant. A hologram filled the room, showing the core, the broken machines, and Jace's repairs. Then the logs revealed a figure in a dark robe tampering with the system. The crowd gasped. It was Elder Terran, Kalira said. Guards rushed out to arrest the traitor. The council went silent. Then one by one, they bowed their heads to Kalira. You are truly your mother's daughter, one elder said, and this human is proven worthy. Kalira turned to Jace. It is time, she said, for our people to open their eyes and our hearts. Jace bowed. I only want peace, and to learn from each other. Virak stepped forward, still cold, but respectful. You have earned my respect, human. That is not easy. Jace nodded. Thank you. That evening, the skies above Alondra were filled with lights. Celebration was held in the palace gardens. Music soft and sweet floated through the air. Jace stood on a balcony, looking at the stars. Kalira joined him, wearing a soft blue robe. She didn't say anything at first. Then she whispered, My people have never seen a human before. But now, they see more than that. They see hope. Jace looked at her and smiled, and I see the truth. You're not the one who needed help. We did. Kalira turned slowly, her back facing him for just a moment like before. But this time, she turned back toward him and didn't walk away. For the first time in many years, the palace of Alondra was filled with light and music. The energy core was stable again. The danger had passed. The people were no longer afraid. They smiled, danced, and looked to the sky with hope, but deep. Inside the royal halls, a storm was rising. Commander Jace Harlow stood beside Princess Kalira in the High Council chamber. The floor beneath them was made of crystal, glowing with soft blue light. The elders sat in a circle above them there. Robes marked with ancient symbols. One elder stood up. His voice was strong and sharp. "Princess Kalira," he said, "you broke tradition. You let a human touch our heart. You exposed our secrets to an outsider." Kalira stood tall, her hands calm at her sides. "Because of that outsider, our world still lives." Another elder, older and kinder, nodded. "That is true, but the law is clear. A ruler must follow tradition. She must marry within the noble bloodline. She must lead with the council's blessing." Kalira said nothing. Jace looked at her. She did not blink. She did not tremble. She was standing at a crossroads, between her people's ancient ways and the future she believed in. Later, Kalira and Jace walked through the royal garden, where the wind moved through glowing flowers. "They want me to choose," Kalira said. "Marry someone I do not love, to keep the council's support, or lose the throne." Jace looked at her with care. "What will happen if you step down?" she sighed. "Captain Varrock will likely take control. He respects peace, but only through fear. He doesn't believe in friendship with Earth. He thinks humans will bring war." Jace shook his head. "He's wrong. We came here by accident, but we stayed in peace." Kalira turned toward him. "You fixed our machines. You helped my people. You looked into my world and didn't run. You didn't judge me when I turned away from you." Her voice softened. "But the council, they still live in fear." That night, Kalira called a private meeting with her most trusted advisors. The room was lit by hanging lights made of crystal shells. Jace stood near the door, watching silently. Kalira faced her advisors. "I will not marry a noble I do not know. I'll not bow to fear." One of the elders gasped. "Then you risk everything." "The council may remove your title," Kalira nodded. "Then let them try. But before they do, I want all of Alondra to hear the truth. Let them choose who should lead." Another advisor whispered. "You speak of the ancient rite, the challenge of flame." Kalira looked at him. "Yes, I will walk the fire path." The challenge of flame was an old tradition, almost forgotten. It had not been used in hundreds of years. It allowed a royal to prove their right to lead by walking through a trial of courage and truth alone. If they passed, the council could not take their crown. But the trial was dangerous. No one had attempted it since the Great Peace. The next day, the entire city gathered in the Valley of Whispers, a sacred place surrounded by silver trees and singing stones. In the center was a large platform made of stone and heat. Jace stood among the crowd, watching with worry. Kalira stepped onto the stone wearing a long white cloak. Captain Varrock, standing beside the council, shouted, "You do not need to do this. The old ways are not required. Choose safety. Choose order." Kalira's voice was clear. "I choose truth." The trial began. Kalira walked across the path of fire where red-hot stones glowed under her feet. She did not cry out. She did not stumble. The first part was pain. The second part was memory. The stones lit up with visions from her past. She saw herself as a child alone, rejected by the elders. She saw her mother's death, the sadness, the silence. She saw her, people looking at her, doubting her every step. The third part was fear. A cloud of smoke surrounded her. Inside, she saw a vision of a dark future, her world falling, fire in the sky, humans invading. But she also saw a light, a single voice breaking. Through Jace's voice, "You're not the one who needed help. We did." Kalira opened her eyes. The smoke cleared. She had reached the end. Of the path, the crowd was silent. Then the singing stones began to glow, and the ancient lights turned blue, the sign of success. Kalira had passed. Jace rushed forward, and Kalira fell into his arms, weak but smiling. You did it, he said softly. She looked up at him with tired eyes. Not for me, for all of us. The council could not speak. The law was clear. Captain Vorak stepped forward. He bowed his head. You have the right to rule, he said. Even if I do not agree with your ways? Kalira nodded. I ask only for your respect, your promise that you will not block peace. Vorak nodded. So long as you remain strong, I will not. That evening, a second celebration was held, not just for the survival of the planet, but for something greater, a new beginning. Jace stood on a small hill. Looking out over the glowing fields, Kalira joined him, now dressed in soft gold robes. Her hair flowed in the wind. They stood together. In silence, then she spoke. I passed the trial, but I know the path ahead is not easy. Jace nodded. You've started something powerful. Change. That always brings resistance. Kalira looked at him. And what about you? Will you leave? Return to your Earth? He smiled a little. Maybe not yet. I think there's still something for me here. She turned her face toward him, her one bright eye glowing in the moonlight. And what do you see now? Jace looked at her quietly. Then he said the same words he spoke when he first saw her. The most beautiful thing I've ever seen. But this time, she didn't turn her back. She stepped closer. 2 days had passed since Princess Kalira walked the challenge of flame. News of her victory had spread across the entire planet of Elandra. People sang her name. They lit blue lanterns in her honor. The elders, once strict and cold, now bowed their heads when she passed. But even with the people's respect, the future was still uncertain. Peace was not something easily kept. Jace Harlow stood on the palace balcony, watching the sunrise over the crystal lakes. He had seen many alien skies in his life, but none like this. The light here was soft, like it cared where it touched. Birds with long glowing feathers flew over the water. Still, his heart was heavy. He knew what was coming. His ship, the Star Voyager, had been repaired by the Elandran engineers. In 3 days, it would be ready to leave. A signal had already been sent to Earth Command. His mission was nearly over. He had found intelligent life. He had found a hidden planet. He had helped save it, and he had found someone. Unexpected, Kalira joined him on the balcony. She wore her simple white robe without her crown. Her long hair moved gently in the morning breeze. You look worried, she said. Jayak didn't look at her right away. My ship is ready. Kalida nodded. Yes, I heard he finally turned. I have to report to my people. They'll want to know everything. The Council, the Energy Core, the sabotage, the Alliance offer. She looked at him. Will they accept peace? Jace gave a small smile. That depends on how we tell the story. Kalira walked to the edge of the balcony and looked out. Then we must tell the truth. Not just the facts, but the heart of it. Jace nodded slowly. We will. Later that day, Kalira stood before the High Council of Elders one last time. The hall was quiet. The ancient lights above glowed gold. She spoke with calm strength. I will not marry a noble. I will not be a puppet of the past. I will rule with the voice of the people, and I will open our gates to the stars. Elder asked. And what of the humans? Kalira said. They are not perfect, but neither are we. Jace Harlow has shown us who they can be: brave, patient, loyal. We will send an official message to Earth. We offer alliance, knowledge, and peace. There was silence. Then one by one, the elders stood and bowed. We follow our Empress, they said. That evening, the message was recorded and prepared for transmission across space. Kalira sat in the palace garden with Jace as the twin moons rose behind them. She handed him a small silver disc. Give this to your leaders. It carries our history, our voice, and my mark. Jace turned it in his hand. The Elandran symbol glowed softly. I'll make sure they understand, he promised. Kalira looked at him. And what will you tell them about us? He was quiet for a moment. I'll tell them the truth. That I met someone who taught me more than any mission ever could. Someone who made me see myself differently. Someone who changed my heart. Kalara looked down, then up again, her voice soft. And will you return? Jace didn't answer right away. I want to, but I don't know how long it will take. There are rules, approvals, time delays. Earth doesn't move as fast as hearts do. She nodded slowly, hiding the sadness in her eyes. Then I will wait, as long as I must. The next morning, the launch platform was ready. The Star Voyager stood tall again, polished and glowing under the morning sun. Landran engineers bowed as Jace approached. He wore his uniform again, but it felt heavier now. Kalara waited near the ramp. The people of the city gathered to watch. For the first time in history, a human would leave Alondra with its blessing. Kalara stepped forward. Her eyes were steady. This is not a goodbye, she said. It is a promise. Jace smiled. I'll come back. You have my word. He paused. Then added, there's still so much I want to learn. About your world. About you. Kalara stepped closer, and I still want to hear more about Earth, about your oceans, and your music. He stood close, not touching, but understanding. Then Kalara did something she had never done before. She reached out and took. No one said a word. The whole city watched their fingers meet, soft, respectful, full of meaning. Jace climbed the ramp. He stood at the door of his ship. One last time he looked back, Kalara stood below. Her white robe glowing in the sunlight, her one bright eye shining with emotion. Jace whispered so only he could hear, still. The most beautiful thing I've ever seen. The ship doors closed, the engines lit, the Star Voyager lifted into the sky. Rising slowly, then faster, disappearing into the clouds, Kalara watched until the last light vanished. Then she turned. But this time, she did not walk away in silence. She walked forward toward the council, toward her people, toward a future she was no longer afraid of. Epilogue. 6 months later, on a clear night above Earth, a message was received. It came through encrypted channels, written in a Landran code. The words were simple. To Commander Jace Harlow, the stars still sing your name. The moons wait for your return. And I have not turned my back. Lyra,